In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use ChatGPT memory of your conversations for self-reflection. I will demonstrate how you can generate prompts for ChatGPT that would provide a summary of all the conversations that you had with it so far, and how you can then visualize the summary as a knowledge graph using the app that I developed called InfraNodus to identify the main topics in the summary, so what you've been having conversations about, and how you can then find the gaps between those topics, which can be very inspiring, because if you bridge those gaps with new ideas, you will probably have some really interesting insights about how you can develop your knowledge further or how you can advance your research. So if you're interested to see how it works, keep watching and I will demonstrate step by step. I will focus on two different workflows. One is the visualization of the ChatGPT summary that it provides and how we can use the graph to find the gaps inside. And then another one will be focused on asking a slightly different question, to ask ChatGPT to provide a response on what's missing from the conversations that we had so far, and then using the graph to direct our attention on the specific topics that we find relevant, and then generating prompts that we can send back to ChatGPT in order to generate responses. So I will demonstrate these two different approaches. I find them very useful and I hope you will find them interesting as well. So let's dive right in. First, I will demonstrate how you can generate a summary of your previous conversations in ChatGPT. So one thing that you should know is that before you do that, if you're based outside of the United States, you have to connect through a VPN, because EU has very strict privacy laws, and I think ChatGPT doesn't allow this feature to work fully in the EU. So what you need to do is to connect through a VPN provider in some US location, and then open ChatGPT as if you're in the United States, and then you can use this feature. Okay, so let's say we're connected through the States, and then you will put in a prompt like this, which says, based on our previous conversations, tell me what you know about me. That's like a well-known prompt that you've probably seen on the internet. You can phrase it differently, but basically you need ChatGPT to provide a summary of what it knows about you. So once you provide this prompt, it's going to give you a response. And then what you can do after is that you can open the InfraNodus extension, which is available as a browser extension, and it will then work in ChatGPT. And once ChatGPT finishes providing the response, what you can do is visualize this response as a knowledge graph, where the concepts are the nodes and the co-occurrences are the connections. So then it provides you a really nice structural overview of the main concepts that you've been talking about to ChatGPT based on this summary here. So I see that I've been talking about AI and knowledge graphs a lot. And then there was some other topics on legal context and systems. Variability is another topic I'm interested in. So it gives me like a really nice overview of everything that I've been talking about. It also shows me the main topics. So for example, here it says that one important topic is knowledge frameworks. Another one is legal context. So it's legal inquiries, adaptive systems, insight network. Then it has something also on technological edge, on art and technology, and so on. So it's actually a really good visual overview of the main topics. But how I like to use it is then to go into the gaps feature of InfraNodus and to ask it to focus on the gaps between those topics. So which clusters are not well connected. And once I focus on those gaps, I can use the built-in AI inside InfraNodus to generate interesting research questions. So for example, let's say here, I find something on nuanced communication and knowledge network. These are two clusters which are not well connected. So I will go into AI advice and then click generate question. And then the built-in AI, which is based on GPT-4o, will generate a research question. How can AI-driven retrieval methods using knowledge graphs be optimized to support the nuanced and detailed communication needs inherent in complex scientific research? So that can be a really interesting question to explore, how I can use those approaches to advance my scientific research, for instance. I can also regenerate the gap and find something completely different. For instance, here, legal context insight network. And then I will ask InfraNodus to generate a research question. And then the question that it provides is, how can network analysis and topical clustering be used to examine the intricacies of VAT compliance in European freelance work, particularly with German and French context? So that's really interesting because it's connecting this topic of network analysis and topical clustering to analysis of legal frameworks, which can be really interesting. So as I'm asking a lot of questions about those topics to ChatGPT, it's telling me, why don't you actually connect your knowledge of knowledge graphs and AI and see how it can be useful for analyzing legal frameworks. So that's actually a really interesting question, and what I can do is copy this question and then send it back to ChatGPT here. Okay, so I will paste it here, and then I will continue having this conversation based on the question that was generated from the InfraNodus extension. And here it provides some really interesting stuff, how I can connect some information on this topic, some guidelines on VATs, for instance, forums also where people discuss how it works, official EU documentation. Then I can build a knowledge graph. So that's really a good approach. It's already providing me almost like an idea for a legal AI and how I can actually map the ontologies inside, and then how I can use topical clustering. So that's like a feature that InfraNodus has for structural insight. So there it even provides me the specific technologies I can use, and then how I can use the knowledge graph to analyze all those legal frameworks and make sure that my companies comply with them, and also how I can even visualize structural gaps and ambiguities in law. So that can also be very interesting because it can help me better understand how I can develop those ideas and my understanding of those ideas further. So this is just one example, but of course you could then generate more graphs and then more questions based on other gaps and move this research further. Now I want to show you how we can use another type of prompt. So here it's asking, based on all our previous conversations, tell me something that I'm missing. So I like using this prompt because instead of providing a summary of the conversation, rather I'm asking ChatGPT to tell me what's missing from the conversations we're having. So here it's telling me that I'm missing an explicit integration of temporal dynamics into your AI-driven knowledge graph approach. That's actually really interesting. It's almost giving me a new idea for a feature inside InfraNodus. And here it's outlining what it means. But what I want to show you is how I can use the graph to then visualize this response and to jump into the topics that I find interesting. So I will open InfraNodus again, but I want to show you another setting that it has. So now it visualizes the words inside the answer. But if I go to settings, I can also ask it to visualize entities. So then it will detect entities in the graph and visualize them instead of the words. So here you can do this in text processing, entities. And then when I go back to this and reload the graph, you will see that the graph is going to be much sparser because it will just focus on specific entities and concepts that it recognizes, not on all the words. By the way, using words is actually really good for AI-generated stuff because then you give more context to the model. But I like using entities in the graph because it allows me to jump to the specific ones that I'm interested in. So for instance, here, then I can see, okay, what about decay rates and InfraNodus, and maybe also, let's say, knowledge graph. So how could these concepts connect in an interesting way? I then click on question, and what InfraNodus does is that it uses the nodes that I selected in the graph to generate an interesting research question that would connect them. Okay, so I kind of focused on the stuff that I found relevant in this response here, and then I asked InfraNodus to generate a research question that is bridging those ideas together. So here it's asking me, how can the integration of temporal dynamics in AI-driven knowledge graphs enhance the understanding of concepts anti-fragility and adaptation over time, considering stochastic resonance, decay rates, and obsolescence? I mean, this is really interesting because it's even talking about resilience and anti-fragility, which can be very interesting for InfraNodus as well, because if I want to help people generate ideas which are robust, this could be a really interesting concept. So I'm going to copy this into ChatGPT, and then it will generate a new response. By the way, I can even feed this question inside InfraNodus itself to the chat that it has, and then InfraNodus itself will provide the response based on the built-in GPT-4 model. So you can also generate responses to those questions inside InfraNodus itself if you don't want to pollute your chat with new responses. So you can use the main chat as a base, have a conversation inside InfraNodus, and once you find something you like, then you feed it back into this main chat. So you have these two different workflows available to you, and you can use them both. I actually like to chat inside InfraNodus itself, and once I get to something really interesting, very specific, then I will feed it to ChatGPT so the chat stays clean, so to say. So yeah, this is how you could use these two approaches. One last thing that I want to demonstrate is that ChatGPT has something that's called memory, and that is available here. If you go to your settings, ChatGPT settings, you can actually see what ChatGPT knows about you. And this is available in personalization, memory. And by the way, you need to make sure to have this turned on, reference chat history and reference saved memories. In this case, this chat memory will work. So you need to check if those two are on. Then you go to manage memories, and here is the list of everything that ChatGPT knows about you, some kind of general understanding of who you are. So what you can do is actually copy this, then you go to InfraNodus, and then you visualize this as a graph. This is also a really good way to have an understanding of how ChatGPT sees you, and to understand if you need to modify those memories a little bit, or what kind of bias it's going to have when it provides responses to you. So here you visualize it as a graph, then you can remove some nodes which are not necessary, like prefer and interested, because these memories contain those words like this user prefers this, or he's interested in that. So we need to remove those, and then we see the main topics that we're interested in. For example, here it knows that I'm interested in the questions of community, polydiversity, political representation. It even knows I'm searching for an apartment in Berlin. So that's quite interesting. For instance, I can select this topic and say like, okay, I don't actually need it in the memories anymore. So I can go back and delete it here. Or I can also make sure that it has something else in the memory. Like for instance, if I want to elaborate a little bit in more detail on the question of how polyvariability connects to the notions of community and platform, I can select those terms, go here, and then I can go back to ChatGPT and actually ask it save in the memory. So I can start a new chat here and ask it to save this as a memory. So I will be like, save these concepts in your memory. And make sure you always focus on those. So that will then provide a response. It says updated saved memory, and here it says wants the assistant to prioritize and focus on concepts polyvariability, community and platform in future conversations. And then if I click manage, I can go back and delete that memory. So this is also how you can control the general context that ChatGPT has, and use this graph also to kind of steer the bias that ChatGPT is going to have in its conversations with you, which I think is very powerful, that you can be aware of that and that you can control it as well. Okay, so I hope that you find this demonstration interesting. You can use the InfraNodus extension if you have an InfraNodus account, and you can download it in the Chrome or Firefox store. We also have a version for Safari as well. And once you create an account, download the extension, then you just activate it by clicking the button in the extensions tab, and then you will be able to visualize it. And like I said, try using it with the default mode first, where it visualizes the words, but if the graphs are a bit too overwhelming, then you can also switch to the entities in the graph settings and use the entities, so the graph is going to be sparser. Thank you for your attention, and let me know if you have any questions, comments, feedback in the comments to this video below.